Have you ever wanted to suffer from the adverse, horrible effects of gambling addiction? The anxiety that it can bring, where you just try to break even and win? The crumbling of your relationships as you dump more and more time into something like an inconsequential game? The reduced efficiency in work or academic performance that means your life starts to become nothing but a husk of what it used to be, to the point where all you can think about is gambling. And about how you can lie to your friends and family so you can gamble more and more. But you only want to take a small financial hit? Dude, let me show you this new thing that's been hitting computer nerds instead of the street, called Balatro. Balatro isn't some pill, it isn't some strain of the devil's lettuce, or even some opiate, but it was made by one madman, and it is the most addictive substance that you could ever partake in. Balatro is an indie roguelike poker game that shows you that you don't need to have a giant amount of lore to go through for people to theorize about, with the game launching with a live service model that the giant publisher will eventually ruin, like the piggies they are, filling up their troughs with your personal information and money from microtransactions. No, you can just make a game and make it pretty darn sweet, develop it, and put it out by your own, all alone in a cave with a box of scraps, and publish it on Steam yourself. So have you ever seen Solitaire for Windows? It's like one of those things you got on your computer just for existing that originally came out with Windows XP, right next to the ever-iconic Minesweeper. Balatro takes some inspiration from Solitaire stylistically while adding some trippy background effects and some wacky art. But Balatro is so much more than an evolution of Solitaire. It's poker stripped down to its most fun elements. They make it so you don't have the time to think about the crushing reality of spending all of your days in front of a computer screen playing digital poker, looking for a certain combination of the cards that will guarantee your victory. Balatro is a roguelike game that is distilled down into its simplest form, with a little bit of stank put on top of it. Because most of the randomized stuff is just the different modifiers you get to your run. There's no real combat system with a bunch of programmed enemies, it's just modified poker. A game of modified poker that I spent way more time on than I thought I would have in a week's time. So how the heck does this game even play anyways? I keep saying it's poker, but if you're looking at the screen, it doesn't look much like poker, does it? That's because if you don't like poker, it doesn't actually matter, because this game tricks you into liking poker. Like For Honor and Dark Souls fool people into playing fighting games, by keeping a similar gameplay loop but making it slightly different so people will get hooked. The game revolves around you scoring poker hands that are scored based off of a multiplier and base chip game, with chips also being added based off of the value of each one of the cards. The goal is to score enough chips by the end of a round to move on to the next. Really simple and easy to understand, right? Well, shoot, it's also addictive. Heck, while I was supposed to write this script, I started playing the game on this exact paragraph just to play the game some more. That's how addicting it is. It's the reason I didn't make a video last week either. And the reason I haven't seen my distant friends, Balatro. The reason I haven't finished watching Fallout, Balatro. This thing's the devil. There are a few things that spice up the game too. There's no sitting there and waiting for a good hand while everyone else plays. Instead, you get the ability to discard up to 5 cards from your hand and re-roll them to hopefully get a more favorable set of cards. So the game always has you thinking in an active role and moving. You could keep low-numbered cards, or you could bet on getting some more face cards or higher cards for a larger score and multiplier, changing that 1 or 5 chips gained per card to something like 10. And if you don't know poker hands, this game has a cheat sheet that will tell you what the hands can be. You have a certain amount of hands that you can play for score, while also amount of times you can discard cards, making it so you're actively gambling to get a certain card or suit for a flush or straight, and not passively sitting at a table waiting for a good hand to eventually show up. Because folding really isn't allowed. Unless you fold before the blind is even played, in that case, you get guaranteed modifiers that show up in other parts of the game. The game only kicks you out and restarts your run when you can't hit the points needed to get out of the blind. There is still money though, and money lets you get to the potatoes of the game with the meat already being explained. Because at the end of each blind, a shop shows up, and it allows you to get 4 things that modify your baseline experience in Balatro. The main one is Joker cards. The Joker cards can do many things, like providing multipliers, changing how cards work, or even changing up the entire playstyle of the run. interacting with every other part of the game, and they have silly little card art. Jokers are the thing that define how your game is won or lost because of how influential they are, making it so you want to do things like mulligan certain cards or shrink the size of your deck to get more consistent pool of cards, while getting some multiplicity or extra cards thrown your way if you fulfill the conditions that the Jokers ask for. The second type is card modifications. These come in all fun-looking colors and visual effects to make it so cards get certain types of new goodies, like multipliers, being added or even multiplied themselves, or maybe just some extra chips. But it can also compound into other parts of the game. Sometimes you can put modifiers on these cards that reward you for either discarding them or keeping them in your hand. And sometimes if you get a combo right, you can start a feedback loop with your Joker cards, making them extremely powerful. There are two types of card modifications. Normal card modifications that usually take up one slot, but there's another one that apply to a little part of the card called a seal, usually adding a modifier that can only be accessed if you fulfill a certain condition. Planets mess with bonuses and modifiers you get by scoring certain hands of cards, permanently leveling them up. That's it. Planet cards are insanely easy to understand and can make it so a normal common hand, when scored, can far outpace hands played like Four of a Kind or even Royal Flushes, making them work well with Jokers that activate or upgrade when they see certain cards played, or certain card hands played. Tarot cards can modify cards, Jokers, and planets in an assortment of ways, or just get rid of cards for you. They can do a lot of things in their tarot cards. Overall, though, I would say they're the most complementary piece of the game with how they affect everything else. And I know I haven't been wisecracking, there's a good reason why. That's because I had to talk about all these systems and mention a little bit about how they work together in synergies so you would understand when I showed you this. If you like watching numbers go up and get high, like if you spent one too many days on Cookie Clicker, I'm gonna have to advise you to look away from the screen right now. Otherwise, watch this. Oh yeah, baby, that's it. That's that dopamine rush into my deep-fried, brain-rotted brainstem that I need to operate. It's not just the numbers either. Watch this clip again and take notice on that nice sound design. Sounds here are satisfying ones that tickle my brain. In memory, the only other game that had such addicting scoring sounds that I can ever think of was none other than the old school classic Peggle. And Peggle needed jet sounds and Ode to Joy to make that happen. Balatro does it all by itself with simple scoring sounds and clicks with cards slightly moving and fire popping out of the scoreboard when you score more points in one hand than you needed in a blind. It's freaking sweet, and it just keeps you coming back. Also, the soundtrack's pretty sweet. You've probably been hearing it this whole time throughout this video. It can both be calm and energetic at the same time, creating a distinct sound library that could only have been made by one guy. And this whole game is made by one guy. It was made very basically just being another way to play cards, with some special cards added in there, of course. It's computer gaming at its base, and I love it for that. Like a retro callback to what used to be. The best part of this game is that most runs can be done in 10 to 15 minutes. Like if you wanted to ruin your life and buy this game, this video probably would have taken up about half the time a normal game would. Heck, if you know what you're doing and what you're looking for, you don't really have to pay attention to it either. You could play this game while you're poorly raising your child and they're watching Skibbity Toilet, on a conference call, or even while you're claiming to be busy. Balatro is on Steam for 15 American dollar dues, but subscribing to me is free, and I think Balatro is a great game that I can't personally recommend. It's too addicting and will probably ruin your life. Like 9.5 out of 10. Needed more pre-rendered cutscenes of characters crying. Well, till next video, fellas.